When you hear these words, let them echo deep within you. You were not chosen randomly, you were marked intentionally. There is a divine imprint on your spirit, and it announces one truth so loud that even the invisible world cannot ignore it. You are the first lottery millionaire in your family, not because of chance, but because consciousness itself has selected you as the vessel through which wealth will break into your bloodline. The moment you accept this, the moment you allow this truth to settle in your imagination as real, everything around you begins to shift to match your assumption. This is the law. This is God moving through you, choosing you, expressing himself as abundance through your awareness. The moment you begin to understand that you were not chosen by chance but marked by consciousness itself for wealth, something profound shifts inside you. Most people believe that success is based on luck, background, or external opportunity. But this idea comes from a limited view of reality. What actually shapes your life is the state of consciousness you occupy, the identity you secretly believe yourself to be, and the assumptions you repeatedly return to throughout your day. When you hear that you are marked for abundance, it is not a poetic statement. It is a spiritual truth rooted in the law of consciousness. Nothing comes into your life unless it first comes through your awareness. Every event, blessing, breakthrough, and miracle appears because the inner you has accepted it as possible. And once accepted, creation must fall. Being marked for wealth means that your inner world has already been selected as the soil in which prosperity will grow. Something within you has shifted to allow the idea of being wealthy to take root. It may have happened slowly over years or in a sudden moment while listening to a message like this. But the moment your inner world accepts the possibility, your life begins to rearrange itself to match that acceptance. To understand this deeply, imagine that your consciousness is like a powerful projector. Whatever image you hold on the inner screen becomes the reality your outer world is forced to display. When you feel chosen or marked for something greater, you are not waiting for life to approve you. You are recognizing that life is following the pattern inside your awareness. The sense of being chosen is not random. It is a signal that your inner self is awakening to its true power. You begin to feel as though wealth is not something outside of you, but something that belongs to you. This feeling is the evidence that the state is forming. Once this state forms, the outer world must conform. This is why some people seem to experience sudden breakthroughs while others repeat the same patterns for years. The difference is not in their circumstances, but in their consciousness. Being marked for wealth means you have reached a point where you no longer seek permission to prosper. Something within you has taken ownership of abundance. You begin to think differently, speak differently, and imagine differently. The old limitations that once held you back begin to dissolve, not because the world has changed, but because you have accepted a new identity. The feeling of being chosen is a shift in identity, a spiritual awakening to who you truly are, beyond limitations, beyond past stories, beyond inherited beliefs. You become aware that you are the operant power, the one shaping your experience through the assumptions you accept as true. And once you accept that you are chosen for wealth, wealth begins responding to you in ways you could not have orchestrated through effort alone. People who feel unchosen often believe that life is happening to them. They wait for opportunities that never come. They think wealth is assigned to a lucky few. They see prosperity as a distant possibility, not a present identity. This mindset keeps them locked in limitation because they have not yet realized that. Being chosen is not something given from outside, but something awakened from within. When you feel chosen, it is because your consciousness has expanded to allow abundance. It is the birth of a new state. And that state carries you effortlessly into a new experience. The world begins to mirror what you have accepted internally because consciousness is always expressing itself outwardly. Nothing external can mark you until you first mark yourself internally. And when you begin operating from the inner conviction that wealth is your natural state, everything around you begins moving to reflect that truth. Now imagine the moment you first felt the possibility of a financial miracle in your life. It may have been faint, a whisper, a passing thought that felt too big to fully claim. But even that faint whisper was the beginning of your shift. Consciousness speaks softly at first, not because it is weak, but because it is subtle. It invites you gently into new states, waiting for you to accept them. When the idea of being chosen, being wealthy, or becoming the first millionaire in your family enters, your awareness, your spirit responds to it because it recognizes itself in that possibility. You are not hearing a new idea. You are remembering who you truly are. This recognition is the mark. This recognition is the selection. This recognition is the beginning of transformation. And once this recognition awakens, it leads directly into the second keynote. Your imagination becomes the birthplace of your financial miracle. There is no wealth outside imagination, because every form of abundance begins as an image, a thought, a feeling within you. Imagination is not childish fantasy. It is the creative power through which every experience is birthed. The house someone lives in began as a picture in the mind of an architect. The successful business someone runs began as an idea held in the mind of its creator. Every invention, discovery, and breakthrough humanity has achieved came from imagination first. When it comes to wealth, the same principle applies. You must first create the feeling, the picture, the assumption of wealth within before you can experience it without. Imagination is not passive. It is the force that shapes reality. When you imagine yourself as wealthy, you are not pretending. You are aligning your consciousness with a state that already exists in the unseen realm. You are entering the version of yourself that already has what you desire. And once you enter that state, the world begins moving to bring that version into physical form. The mistake most people make is thinking imagination is separate from reality. But in truth, imagination is the seed of reality. The external world is only the harvest. When you plant a seed of abundance in your imagination, you are planting the very blueprint that will later appear as wealth, opportunities, money, and success. To truly use imagination as the birthplace of your miracle, you must feel the end as real. You must imagine yourself already in possession of the wealth you desire. Feel the ease of it, the comfort of it, the naturalness of it. Feel what your life is like when money is no longer a problem. Feel the freedom, the gratitude, the quiet confidence. When this feeling becomes natural to you, you have successfully planted the seed. The outer world has no choice but to reflect what you have accepted as true within. This is what separates those who merely hope for wealth from those who manifest it. Hope looks outward. Imagination looks inward. Hope waits. Imagination creates. When you imagine yourself as wealthy, your mind begins to filter the world differently. Your intuition sharpens. Your decisions improve. Your energy becomes magnetic. You begin to attract opportunities that match your inner state, because you are no longer operating from lack. You are living from the end. You are acting from the identity of someone who already possesses what they desire. And this inner shift creates outer results with precision. The world rearranges itself according to your assumption, because consciousness is the only true cause. This is why imagination is called the birthplace. It is the womb of your future experiences. When you imagine yourself as the first millionaire in your family, you are stepping into the state that makes it possible. You are accepting yourself as the one chosen to break financial patterns that have existed for generations. You are entering the identity of wealth long before the world confirms it. And that inner acceptance, repeated consistently, becomes the force that draws your miracle into physical reality. You do not wait for the miracle, you generate it. You do not chase wealth, you become the version of yourself that wealth chases. Divine favor moves first within you before it appears around you. And understand, this principle changes everything about how you approach life. Most people look for evidence of blessing in the external world and wait for circumstances to confirm that they are favored or chosen. They wait for opportunities, for the right timing, for validation from others. But this is the exact opposite of how the universe operates. The unseen always precedes the seen. The inner world is the architect of the outer world. Every advancement, every sudden windfall, every stroke of luck begins in consciousness. When you feel the stirrings of divine favor within, you are not imagining something that may or may not happen. You are tapping into the truth of reality. The feeling that you are favored, that circumstances are aligning, that you are being guided and elevated is already the evidence. It is the spark that ignites creation. When you recognize favor within, you begin to operate from a state of expectancy. You begin to move in harmony with your unseen support, and the outer world naturally responds. Favor is not something that must be earned in the physical. It is first realized in the state of mind and heart. Once it exists there, it is inevitable that it will manifest outwardly. To live as if divine favor is active in your life is to act from certainty rather than doubt. It is to make decisions with confidence. knowing that the unseen forces are already organizing circumstances in your favor. This is not luck or coincidence. This is the natural flow of consciousness. When you move through life with the awareness that you are favored, the energy around you changes. People begin to respond differently. Doors open where they once seemed closed. Opportunities appear that you did not anticipate. Resources show up at the right moment. Your life begins to rearrange itself because favor is a force that moves the world toward alignment with your inner state. When you understand this, you realize that waiting for proof is unnecessary. Proof is always the consequence, not the precursor. The first proof exists in your consciousness, and it is your task to honor it by maintaining the state. You are the doorway through which generational wealth enters your family. And understanding this principle is profoundly transformative. Wealth is not only an individual experience, it is also a legacy, a force that can shift the trajectory of your entire bloodline. When you accept your role as the one through whom abundance enters your family, you are stepping into a responsibility that requires inner alignment. Your imagination, your assumptions, and your feelings must reflect the reality you intend to create for yourself and those who come after you. Being the doorway means that your inner state carries the power to influence not just your own circumstances, but the conditions of those connected to you. Wealth is not confined to money alone. It is the expression of prosperity in every area of life, including freedom, opportunity, and security. When you recognize yourself as this doorway, you begin to act in ways that are consistent with generational abundance. You make choices from the perspective of someone who carries the blessing forward. And in doing so, you amplify the force of favor that moves through you. The doorway is not a passive position. It is an active state of consciousness that requires awareness and commitment. It demands that you consistently embody the qualities of someone who attracts and receives wealth naturally. You must think, speak, and feel in alignment with the reality of abundance. Every thought of lack weakens the doorway. Every act of doubt narrows it. Conversely, every assumption of prosperity, every moment of faith, and every instance of gratitude expands it. The doorway is strengthened by repetition, by habit, and by the constant affirmation of your chosen state. You are not simply hoping to benefit your family. You are deliberately creating conditions that will transform the lineage itself. This is the responsibility and the privilege of being marked by favor and designated as the one through whom abundance flows. When you internalize the idea that divine favor moves first within you and that you are the doorway for generational wealth, your actions take on new meaning. You begin to recognize that the physical world is malleable, responding to the patterns established in your consciousness. You do not manipulate the world through effort alone. You influence it through your state. Favor acts as a magnet for circumstances that reflect your internal alignment. Being the doorway means that you are positioned to receive and transmit this magnetism. As you hold the state of certainty, wealth begins to flow toward you effortlessly. And in receiving it, you automatically set the stage for others to benefit. You are the point of initiation, the node through which abundance circulates. This is not about personal gain alone. It is about activating a pattern that can lift generations. The responsibility of being a doorway also teaches the importance of inner discipline. The forces of the universe respond to the clarity of your imagination, to the firmness of your assumption, and to the steadiness of your feeling. When you are unsteady, distracted, or conflicted, the doorway becomes partially closed. When you are aligned, focused, and consistent, the doorway is fully open. You learn to guard your inner world as the sacred place where the future is conceived. You recognize that your imagination is not a playground for random thoughts, but the workshop where your destiny is forged. Everything that flows through you into the family line originates in this invisible inner domain. The power of being the doorway lies in your ability to maintain a steady state of favor, abundance, and expectancy. The more you operate from this awareness, the more effortless your life becomes. The universe responds naturally because the laws of consciousness are exact and unyielding. Favor does not require manipulation or struggle. Generational wealth does not demand endless effort. Both respond to the alignment of your inner world. Every act of imagination, every sustained feeling of prosperity, every acknowledgement of divine favor within you strengthens the energy that moves outward. You begin to witness events that previously seemed improbable happening with consistency. You begin to recognize synchronicities as the language of favor, guiding you toward the precise opportunities that match your inner state. You feel the unfolding of your purpose as both receiver and transmitter of abundance, and this awareness amplifies your creative power. When you start to embrace the truth that divine favor moves first with you, you learn to prioritize your inner state above all else. Circumstances are secondary because they are expressions of what has already been accepted inside. The outer world is merely the reflection. Favor within guarantees favor without, because the inner and outer are inseparable in the law of consciousness. Every decision you make, every thought you entertain, every assumption you hold, contributes to the opening or closing of the doorway. This understanding teaches precision in your focus and discipline in your imagination. You begin to treat your inner world as sacred, knowing that it carries the weight of destiny, not only for yourself, but for your lineage. Being the doorway for generational wealth also reshapes your perception of responsibility and contribution. Wealth is not selfish when it is used as a channel to elevate others. The money, opportunities, and freedom you attract are amplified by the awareness that they serve a greater purpose. Your family, your descendants, and even those who cross your path benefit from the alignment you hold. You are not simply creating wealth, you are activating a pattern that radiates outward, creating stability and opportunity that endures. Every decision made from this state carries exponential impact because the energy of favor compounds, touching lives in ways you may not immediately recognize. To live as the doorway is to live with an understanding that abundance is both a personal right and a generational responsibility. As you continue to inhabit the consciousness of divine favor and the doorway of generational wealth, you notice subtle shifts in your perception. Obstacles no longer appear as blocks, but as invitations to maintain your state. Challenges are no longer sources of stress, but opportunities to strengthen your alignment. Every interaction, every event, every moment becomes a chance to reaffirm that you are chosen and that abundance flows through you. Your imagination becomes a constant laboratory where the future is experimented with, tested, and refined. The unseen world mirrors your inner convictions, and the outer world begins to display them with increasing clarity. You realize that being marked and being the doorway is not a temporary condition. It is a continuous state of being that you must nurture, expand, and inhabit consistently. In this process, you develop an unshakable faith in the unseen mechanics of life. You no longer rely on luck, timing, or human validation. You know that the law is exact, and that your inner alignment dictates outer reality. You feel a quiet confidence, an inner authority that guides every choice and action. This confidence is magnetic. People, opportunities, and resources begin to move toward you with ease because your consciousness is broadcasting the certainty of favor. Being the doorway is not passive. It is a dynamic state that requires awareness, faith, and deliberate focus. Every day, every thought and every feeling contributes to strengthening this conduit, ensuring that the wealth flowing through you is aligned with your highest purpose and intended to elevate not only yourself, but the generations that follow. The inner conviction you feel is the proof of things unseen, and once you begin to understand this, your relationship with reality transforms completely. Most people live in a world where evidence and validation must come from what they see, hear, or experience externally. They require confirmation from circumstances, other people, or external events to believe that their dreams are possible. This approach, however, reverses the natural order of creation. The unseen always precedes the seen, and proof exists first in consciousness before it manifests in the material world. Inner conviction is the mark of this unseen reality. When you feel a deep knowing, a certainty that cannot be shaken by outer appearance, you are tapping into the eternal truth of your own creative power. This conviction is not a fleeting thought or a passing hope. It is a state of mind that holds reality in suspension, shaping everything that will follow. It is the internal evidence that what you desire is already complete in the invisible realm. And it is this conviction that will draw the outer world into alignment with what has already been accepted internally. Understanding that inner conviction is proof requires you to redefine what you mean by evidence. Evidence is no longer external circumstances, because those are merely reflections of what already exists within. Evidence is the feeling of certainty that lives in your heart, and mind. The sense of unshakable knowing that your desire is already fulfilled. When you anchor yourself in this certainty, you begin to act, speak, and move as if your vision has already been realized. This inner state of proof becomes the guiding compass for every decision, thought, and action. You no longer rely on external validation because your inner conviction is sufficient. You move through life with the confidence of someone who knows the end from the beginning, and this awareness alone begins to shape events in your favor. The universe is designed to reflect the state you occupy and inner. Conviction ensures that the reflection will match your assumption. When you feel proof within, you stop waiting for signs, coincidences, or lucky breaks. You recognize that waiting implies doubt, and doubt fractures the creative power of consciousness. Instead, you maintain a steady inner state that embodies the reality you desire. Every challenge, every delay, every seeming obstacle is met with the understanding that it exists only in the outer world and does not dictate the inner truth. The inner conviction is a lighthouse that guides your experience through uncertainty. It is a reservoir of certainty that draws circumstances, opportunities, and resources toward you without strain or struggle. You understand that nothing external can confirm what has already been established internally. And in this realization, you operate from a place of power rather than reaction. The proof of things unseen resides entirely within your acceptance and assumption, and once you cultivate it, creation must follow. Wealth responds to the state you occupy, not the circumstances you see, and this principle is central to understanding how abundance flows naturally into your life. Many people look around at lack, scarcity, or limitation and mistakenly assume that their outer world defines what is possible for them. They believe that circumstances determine outcomes, and this belief creates a loop of lack that reinforces itself repeatedly. The truth, however, is that reality is shaped by the state of consciousness you occupy at every moment. If you maintain the inner state of abundance, prosperity, and certainty, the outer world must eventually conform. Wealth does not respond to struggle, worry, or observation. It responds to alignment, expectation, and assumption. The richer your internal experience of abundance, the more naturally money, opportunities, and resources begin to move toward you. Outer circumstances are like a mirror, reflecting back the inner state with exact precision. Understanding that wealth responds to state rather than circumstance shifts the focus from effort to alignment. You no longer attempt to manipulate external conditions or chase after opportunities that may or may not exist. Instead, you cultivate the inner experience of having what you desire. You think, feel, and behave as someone who is already wealthy. You imagine the details of your life as if the wealth has already arrived. And in doing so, you set in motion the invisible forces that organize the outer world to reflect that inner reality. It is not about pretending or acting in superficial ways. It is about entering a psychological state that becomes self-evident through feeling and assumption. The outer world cannot resist the momentum of a consciousness that is certain. And this is how wealth naturally responds. When you consistently maintain this state, a transformation begins to occur in your daily life. Situations that once seemed impossible become manageable. Opportunities that seemed rare begin to appear with regularity. Ideas, connections, and circumstances align effortlessly because the law of consciousness is exact. Your inner world serves as the command center, and your outer world responds as a reflection of the orders issued from within. This principle is why some people appear to have money fall into their life with ease, while others struggle endlessly despite effort and talent. It is not talent, effort, or education that guarantees wealth. It is the state you occupy. Once you understand this, you can consciously take control of your inner environment and direct the flow of abundance in any area you choose. Maintaining a state of wealth consciousness requires more than momentary focus. It requires consistent practice, deliberate thought, and sustained feeling. You must continually return to the assumption that you are abundant, prosperous, and worthy of receiving without hesitation. You must feel as though money and opportunity are natural extensions of your being, not something external that must be sought. The inner state becomes the magnet, the source, and the authority. Every time you dwell in this state, it reinforces the pattern, making it easier for your consciousness to remain aligned. Doubt, worry, and lack are simply signals that you have stepped out of alignment. Recognizing them allows you to return to the state with clarity and determination. Wealth flows naturally to those who inhabit it internally because the universe always conforms to the dominant state within. This principle also teaches patience and trust. You learn to understand that the absence of immediate evidence does not negate your inner reality. Just because wealth has not yet appeared in the external world does not mean it is not already true within. The unseen always precedes the seen. And timing in the outer world is irrelevant compared to the certainty you hold inside. This understanding frees you from anxiety, fear, and desperation. You operate from a place of confidence and calm, knowing that your inner state is the source of every manifestation. The world begins to adapt and reorganize around your internal assumption, creating circumstances that are fully in harmony with the state you occupy. The law is reliable, and once you grasp it, you become a master of your reality. As you continue to develop inner conviction and occupy the state of wealth, you notice subtle shifts in perception and behavior. You start to make decisions with clarity, act with assurance, and speak with authority. Your energy becomes magnetic, drawing resources, people, and opportunities effortlessly. You begin to recognize that every event in your life, whether positive or seemingly challenging, serves to reinforce or redirect your inner alignment. This awareness allows you to navigate life with ease, grace, and precision. You no longer react out of fear or limitation. You respond from a place of creative authority. Wealth becomes an inevitable outcome because you are living in the state, generates it naturally. Your consciousness dictates reality, and reality conforms with fidelity to the state you maintain. The power of inner conviction combined with a wealth-aligned state creates a self-reinforcing cycle. The deeper your conviction in the unseen, the stronger your internal assumption, and the more effortlessly the outer world mirrors it. Circumstances no longer hold power over you, and external events serve only to confirm what you have already accepted internally. Your imagination, feeling, and assumption converge into a single point of creative force, which then radiates outward, drawing wealth and abundance toward you. You become the living evidence of the law of consciousness, a demonstration of how inner certainty creates outer reality. The inner state is no longer optional. It is the generator, the source, and the guarantor of everything that manifests. You assume the feeling of being a millionaire before the world confirms it. And this principle is the cornerstone of manifesting any form of abundance. Many people wait for external circumstances to justify their belief, to provide evidence that they can be wealthy, or to validate the idea that financial freedom is possible for them. This waiting creates delay, frustration, and repeated cycles of disappointment. The truth, however, is that the inner assumption precedes all outer confirmation. The moment you embody the feeling of already being wealthy, the universe begins to move in exact correspondence with your state. You do not wait for a paycheck, a lottery win, or a business opportunity to prove your worth. You prove your worth by the reality you accept internally. Feeling as a millionaire now is not pretending or wishful thinking. It is aligning with the frequency of abundance, stepping into the psychological state that generates wealth automatically. Every action, thought, and decision flows from this internal reality, and the external world cannot help but respond. Assuming the feeling of being a millionaire requires a total immersion in the state of having already arrived. It is not enough to say the words or repeat affirmations mechanically. The mind, body, and imagination must fully accept that the wealth is yours, that it exists for you, and that it is inevitable. You must feel the naturalness of abundance, the confidence it brings, the freedom it provides, and the ease with which life unfolds when you are prosperous. The senses must experience the state internally, as if it were already physically present. When this assumption is deeply felt, it acts like a magnet, drawing situations, opportunities, and people toward you that correspond to the reality you have accepted. You are no longer passive in creation. You are active, directing life through the power of assumption, allowing the unseen to shape the seen with precision. Living in the state of assumed wealth transforms perception. Every obstacle becomes temporary, every challenge a lesson in alignment, and every scarcity a signal to return to the inner reality you hold. You no longer rely on the external world to dictate your emotions or to prove your potential. Instead, your inner state becomes the foundation from which all outer experiences emerge. This is why it is said that wealth does not come to those who seek it desperately, but to those who inhabit the state of having it first. When you assume the feeling of being a millionaire, you enter a psychological domain where your imagination, emotions, and consciousness work together to orchestrate outcomes that are consistent with that assumption. The outer world simply has to follow the blueprint you have created internally. The power of assumption also teaches that consistency is more important than intensity. Feeling wealthy once or twice is not enough to manifest a sustained reality. You must consistently return to the state, reaffirming your identity as a millionaire until it becomes natural and effortless. This repeated assumption strengthens the mental and emotional pathways that connect your inner world to the outer world, creating a steady flow of manifestation. Doubts, worries, or old beliefs about lack are simply distractions that signal you to return to your chosen state. When you persist, your inner conviction becomes unshakable, and the outer world eventually mirrors this. Certainty with opportunities, resources, and experiences that align perfectly with your assumption. The more real the feeling becomes internally, the more inevitable the external result. The act of assuming the feeling of being a millionaire also reprograms your subconscious mind. Your subconscious does not differentiate between reality and imagination. It accepts whatever you consistently impress upon it as true. By dwelling in the state of having wealth now, you implant a deep-seated blueprint that guides every action, choice, and reaction in your life. Decisions become aligned with abundance, behavior becomes consistent with prosperity, and intuition begins to direct you toward opportunities that match your state. The subconscious mind orchestrates circumstances, people, and events to fulfill the identity you have assumed. This is why imagination and feeling are far more powerful than external effort alone, because the subconscious is the operative force that shapes the material world according to the inner assumption. When you assume the feeling of being a millionaire, your energy changes in ways that are tangible yet often invisible to the casual observer. You carry yourself differently, you speak differently, and you approach life with a sense of confidence that is magnetic. People respond to this energy, opportunities appear, and your environment begins to rearrange itself to match your internal state. The universe recognizes the signal you are broadcasting and conforms accordingly. This is why it is not enough to dream about wealth. You must live as if it is already yours. The moment you accept the identity, everything else aligns. The outer world cannot resist the momentum of a consciousness that is settled in certainty. This is the secret that has always been taught by those who understand the law of consciousness. The next principle flows naturally from this one. The lottery becomes a channel because you have accepted it as your path. Life provides many avenues for abundance, but the channel that becomes available to you is always the one that corresponds to the state you occupy. If your inner world assumes wealth, the universe will present methods, tools, and opportunities that reflect that state. For some, this may be a business venture, an unexpected inheritance, or creative work. For others, it may manifest as a lottery win or sudden financial stroke of fortune. The key is that you do not attempt to force the path. You do not try to manipulate circumstances externally. Instead, you assume the feeling of already being wealthy and allow the universe to deliver abundance through the channel that resonates with your internal reality. The lottery, in this case, is simply a vehicle for expressing the wealth you have already assumed as true. Understanding that the lottery becomes a channel emphasizes the importance of alignment. You do not chase the numbers, the strategy, or the odds. You cultivate the inner state, the feeling of being a millionaire, and the channel emerges naturally to deliver what corresponds to that state. The universe does not require your effort in the external sense to bring about the result. It requires your complete acceptance and assumption internally. When you occupy the state fully, the appropriate opportunities will present themselves, and the channel will open without struggle or forcing. You become the receptive magnet for the exact form of abundance that aligns with your consciousness. The external method is secondary. The inner state is primary. When you understand this, you begin to approach life differently. You recognize that the outer world is not the source of your wealth. It is a reflection of your inner state. You stop worrying about strategy, timing, or method, and you focus entirely on the cultivation of the feeling of being wealthy. Every moment of doubt or lack is a signal to return to your inner reality. You feel the certainty, the ease, the confidence, and the naturalness of abundance. You allow yourself to dwell in this state consistently, knowing that the universe will handle the manifestation. The lottery, business opportunities, investments, or unexpected windfalls are merely expressions of the state you maintain within. By occupying the feeling of being a millionaire first, you set the stage for the outer world to respond in perfect alignment. This principle also teaches patience and trust in the unseen. You may not immediately see the manifestation of wealth in the form you expect, but that does not diminish the reality of your inner state. The law operates without error, and the outer world unfolds in perfect timing according to your inner alignment. By trusting the process, continuing to assume the feeling of being a millionaire, and allowing the universe to choose the channel through which abundance flows, you remain in harmony with the law of consciousness. You stop forcing, stop chasing, and stop struggling, because the momentum of your assumed state carries everything toward you effortlessly. Your imagination, your feeling, and your assumption converge to create the blueprint that reality will inevitably follow. Assuming the feeling of being a millionaire and allowing the lottery to become the channel requires discipline, inattention, and feeling. You must consistently return to the state of wealth, reinforcing the assumption until it becomes dominant in your consciousness. Doubts, fears, or thoughts of lack are simply signals to realign. You do not engage with them or give them power. You gently return to the state of certainty, confidence, and abundance. The lottery, in this context, is simply an external reflection of the inner state. By holding the internal reality firmly, the external manifestation becomes inevitable. You are not relying on chance, strategy, or human logic. You are relying on the power of consciousness to create your desired reality. As this understanding deepens, you notice subtle changes in your behavior, perception, and energy. You make decisions aligned with wealth, see opportunities where others see obstacles, and feel a natural sense of flow in life. The universe begins to orchestrate circumstances to deliver abundance, not because of your effort, but because your inner state demands it. You begin to witness coincidences, synchronicities, and unexpected sources of income appearing naturally, all reflecting the alignment you maintain internally. The lottery is not random. It is the channel that corresponds to your assumed state of wealth. And by dwelling consistently in the feeling of being a millionaire, you ensure that the channel flows effortlessly toward you. Your confidence is spiritual awareness, not ego. And understanding this distinction transforms the way you approach every aspect of life. Many people confuse confidence with ego, believing that to feel confident, they must assert themselves, compete, or prove their worth to others. This is a limited view that creates tension, resistance, and cycles of struggle. True confidence is not derived from external validation or achievements. It is a quiet, unwavering awareness of your own power, your own alignment, and your own place within the flow of life. It arises naturally when you recognize that you are an expression of consciousness itself, capable of drawing into your life whatever you assume as true. Spiritual awareness is the recognition that your inner state is the source of all manifestation. Confidence rooted in this understanding does not need to assert, defend, or convince. It simply knows. It simply trusts. It simply assumes that all things necessary for your fulfillment are already moving toward you, because the unseen world is responding to the state you occupy. This is the kind of confidence that makes wealth, opportunity, and abundance inevitable. It is unshakable because it is not built on conditions, opinions, or temporary circumstances. It is built on your alignment with the eternal principles that govern creation. When confidence is based on spiritual awareness, every action you take carries a different quality. You move through life with assurance rather than hesitation. Your decisions are guided by clarity rather than fear. You do not wait for circumstances to prove that you are capable, nor do you rely on others to confirm your worth. This internal certainty radiates outward, subtly influencing those around you and aligning external circumstances with your inner state. People and opportunities are naturally drawn to you because consciousness recognizes the unshakable certainty within you. Unlike ego-based confidence, which often leads to struggle, resistance, and neediness, spiritual confidence creates alignment and flow. You are no longer a reactive participant in life. You become the conscious director of your reality. Every thought, every word, and every action is an extension of the awareness that you are already complete and already capable of manifesting the life you desire. This awareness becomes magnetic, drawing circumstances that mirror your inner state without effort or force. Gratitude for the unseen accelerates manifestation into the seen, and this is one of the most powerful tools you can cultivate. Most people wait for external confirmation before feeling grateful, believing that gratitude should come only after the result is visible. This is a misunderstanding of the creative law. Gratitude is not for what you already have. It is the acknowledgement of what is already yours in the unseen realm. When you feel gratitude for the outcome you desire before it appears, you are effectively confirming your alignment with it. Gratitude is an internal declaration that the desire exists and is already complete in consciousness. It signals to your subconscious and the universe that you are in harmony with the reality you want to experience. This practice shifts your energy from lack, need, or doubt into abundance, joy, and expectancy. It is not a superficial exercise. It is a profound alignment of feeling, thought, and assumption. Gratitude becomes the catalyst that accelerates manifestation, moving what exists invisibly into your tangible experience with precision. When you combine confidence rooted in spiritual awareness with gratitude for the unseen, you create a powerful dynamic that the universe cannot resist. Confidence ensures that you remain aligned with your inner knowing, while gratitude maintains a high frequency of expectation and joy. Together, they form a state in which manifestation becomes effortless. You no longer struggle, chase, or plead for results. Instead, you inhabit the state of fulfillment, and life responds accordingly. Circumstances, people, and opportunities naturally move to reflect the inner reality you maintain. Every act of gratitude for what has not yet appeared strengthens your inner conviction and solidifies your identity as someone who already possesses the desired outcome. This practice trains your consciousness to dwell exclusively in the state of having, not in the state of wanting, and it establishes a pattern of abundance that continues to produce results consistently. When you begin to practice gratitude for the unseen, you also learn to recognize and release resistance. Resistance appears as doubt, fear, impatience, or disbelief. These thoughts and feelings are signals that your consciousness is out of alignment with the reality you are assuming. By consciously shifting into gratitude, you neutralize resistance and reinforce your inner state. The unseen begins to conform to your assumption because you have signaled readiness, alignment, and expectancy. Gratitude is the bridge between imagination and reality. It allows you to feel the fulfillment of your desires now, even before the physical evidence appears. This feeling of fulfillment generates the emotional energy necessary to bring your imagined reality into form. Without gratitude, your confidence can remain abstract. But with gratitude, confidence becomes alive, actionable, and magnetic. It turns inner knowing into tangible results. Spiritual awareness in confidence also teaches the importance of self-reliance and inner guidance. You no longer look externally for signs, approval, or validation. Instead, you learn to trust the inner compass that directs you toward the fulfillment of your desires. This inner compass operates through intuition, feeling, and imagination. When you consistently act from this awareness, external circumstances begin to mirror your internal direction. Opportunities appear, connections are made, and resources flow in ways that align perfectly with your assumed reality. Confidence, rooted in spiritual awareness, ensures that you do not become reactive to external events. You maintain stability, clarity, and authority regardless of what is happening around you. This stability becomes the anchor that allows the unseen to work on your behalf, translating your inner state into outer results. Gratitude further amplifies this process because it generates a positive, receptive energy that harmonizes with abundance. When you express gratitude for the unseen, you are essentially confirming to the universe and to your own consciousness that you accept the reality of your desire. Gratitude is not about hoping or wishing. It is about acknowledging that the fulfillment is already present in consciousness. This acknowledgement opens the channels through which abundance flows. It strengthens the magnetic force that draws circumstances, people, and resources to you in exact accordance with your inner state. Without gratitude, even confidence rooted in spiritual awareness can be limited by tension or expectation. Gratitude removes resistance and allows the creative process to unfold naturally, effortlessly, and continuously. It aligns the conscious mind, subconscious mind, and universal forces to operate as one cohesive unit toward the manifestation of your desire. The combination of spiritual confidence and gratitude also reshapes your perception of scarcity and limitation. You begin to see that lack is only temporary and illusory, appearing when consciousness fails to recognize its own creative power. With inner certainty and gratitude, you maintain the state of abundance regardless of temporary circumstances. You recognize that material evidence is secondary to your inner state and that the outer world cannot contradict the reality you have assumed in consciousness. Challenges become signals to deepen your awareness, to reaffirm your gratitude, and to return to the state of alignment. Every situation, positive or seemingly negative, becomes a tool to reinforce your confidence and your feeling of grateful expectation. You begin to experience life with clarity, composure, and authority because your inner state dictates your outer reality with consistency. This practice creates a continuous feedback loop of empowerment. Spiritual confidence ensures that you act with clarity, purpose, and authority. Gratitude amplifies the magnetic force of your consciousness, drawing the unseen into form. Together, they generate an internal momentum that shapes circumstances effortlessly. Opportunities that once seemed rare or difficult to access appear naturally. Wealth, success, and abundance are not the result of external effort alone. They are the manifestation of the inner state you consistently inhabit. The universe conforms to your consciousness, and the more consistently you maintain confidence and gratitude, the faster and more accurately manifestation occurs. This is the principle that turns ordinary individuals into conscious creators capable of shaping life according to their highest vision. You attract wealth because you have become aligned with abundance consciousness, and understanding this principle is transformative because it shifts the focus from chasing money to embodying a state that naturally magnetizes it. Many people believe that wealth is gained primarily through effort, strategy, or external conditions, and while the elements can play a role, they are secondary to the state of consciousness that precedes every manifestation. Abundance consciousness is a state in which you live, think, feel, and assume from the perspective of already possessing what you desire. It is the internal acceptance of prosperity as a natural and inevitable aspect of your being. When you occupy this state consistently, everything around you begins to respond, not because you struggle to acquire it, but because you have aligned your energy with its source. Wealth flows toward consciousness that mirrors it. And the moment you embody abundance internally, your external world becomes a reflection of that alignment. To cultivate this alignment, you must first recognize that your thoughts, assumptions, and feelings are the primary drivers of your experience. It is not enough to wish for financial freedom or to desire a sudden windfall. You must enter the inner state of someone who already possesses wealth, someone who moves through life effortlessly, making decisions from a place of clarity, confidence, and expectancy. This state becomes magnetic because it resonates with the forces of creation, drawing circumstance, opportunities, and people into harmony with the assumption you maintain. Abundance consciousness is not simply a mental exercise. It is an immersive state that transforms. Perception guides action and activates unseen forces to work on your behalf. When you become this consciousness, you no longer react to scarcity, limitation, or lack. You operate from a place of certainty, allowing wealth to be drawn toward you naturally without struggle or external validation. Alignment with abundance consciousness also changes the way you interact with the world. Every choice, every action, every decision flows from the inner state of having rather than the state of needing. When you think, speak, and behave as someone already abundant, you create a coherent signal that resonates with the opportunities and resources that correspond to your state. This coherence is what makes manifestation reliable. The universe does not need to convince you or prove itself. It responds automatically to the inner pattern you maintain. You begin to notice synchronicities, unexpected opportunities, and resources aligning in ways that appear miraculous to those who operate from lack. This alignment is not magical in the sense of being unpredictable. It is a precise response to the state you occupy. Your consciousness becomes a lighthouse, drawing wealth to the point where you are fully prepared to receive it without resistance. Becoming aligned with abundance consciousness also requires a consistent practice of self-awareness. You must monitor your thoughts, feelings, and assumptions to ensure that they remain in harmony with the state you wish to occupy. When negative or limiting beliefs arise, they must be gently redirected or replaced with the perspective of abundance. This discipline is not burdensome, but empowering, because it teaches you to operate from your own creative authority rather than reacting to the conditions around you. Every act of inner adjustment reinforces the alignment, strengthens your magnetic power, and ensures that wealth continues to flow toward you effortlessly. The more you inhabit this consciousness, the more automatic the process becomes, until your external world naturally reflects the inner reality you maintain without conscious effort. Doubt fades as you identify with your higher self instead of old limitation. This principle is fundamental because doubt acts as a barrier to manifestation. When you cling to old patterns, fears, or beliefs about lack, you inadvertently block the flow of abundance. The higher self, however, is fully aware of your creative power, the law of consciousness, and the inevitability of manifestation when the state is correctly held. By shifting your identification from fear and limitation to your higher self, you operate from a source of clarity, power, and certainty. Doubt is simply a signal that your consciousness has temporarily strayed from the truth of your being. Recognizing it allows you to realign, return to the state of assumption, and reinforce the inner certainty that wealth and abundance are your natural inheritance. This process strengthens your ability to remain consistent, resilient, and unwavering in the face of temporary circumstances that might otherwise provoke uncertainty. Identifying with your higher self also transforms your relationship with external events. You no longer perceive obstacles as threats or setbacks. Instead, every event becomes an opportunity to reaffirm your alignment, to deepen your state of abundance, and to strengthen your inner conviction. The higher self operates from an understanding of eternal law, recognizing that all experiences are orchestrated to reinforce the state you maintain within. When you adopt this perspective, challenges are no longer discouraging. They become instructional, guiding you toward refining your assumption, sharpening your focus, and solidifying your alignment with abundance. You begin to recognize the precise role of every circumstance in your life, seeing each as a step that serves your ultimate manifestation rather than as a random or threatening event. This awareness empowers you to move confidently, knowing that every condition is ultimately aligned with your inner truth. Doubt, when identified and released, creates space for a greater clarity and purity of assumption. As old limitations dissolve, the consciousness that remains is more receptive, more magnetic, and more aligned with the forces of creation. Wealth, opportunities, and resources are drawn to this state without effort, because the law of consciousness always responds to the dominant assumption. The higher self serves as both guide and anchor, ensuring that your inner state remains consistent and unshakable. By maintaining identification with this awareness, you are able to navigate the outer world with grace, authority, understanding that nothing external has the power to contradict the reality you hold internally. The consistency of your inner state becomes the guarantor of manifestation, and this is the key to reliable and continuous abundance. Alignment with abundance, consciousness, and identification with the higher self also fundamentally change how you experience time and patience. You no longer measure manifestation by external evidence or temporal milestones. You understand that the unseen always precedes the seen, and that the timing of physical manifestation is irrelevant to the certainty of your inner reality. Your awareness of being aligned, coupled with your trust in the higher self, allows you to remain patient without anxiety, maintaining the state of wealth and abundance while the outer world organizes itself to reflect that inner truth. Every day, every moment spent in this state reinforces the pattern, deepens the alignment, and strengthens your capacity to manifest effortlessly. You no longer need to chase results, because the inner certainty ensures that results are already in motion, moving invisibly toward physical form in perfect order. This process also affects the quality of your imagination. When you operate from abundance consciousness and higher self-alignment, your imagination becomes a precise tool for creation, rather than a source of wandering or doubt. You visualize, assume, and feel as if your desires are already realized. Every image, feeling, and mental scene is infused with the authority of someone who knows that the unseen is already completed. Imagination in this state is not random or speculative. It is deliberate, purposeful, and coherent. It creates a psychological reality that directly influences the material world, drawing circumstances that match the inner state with precision. By consistently engaging imagination in alignment with abundance and the higher self, you ensure that every creative effort is effective. Every manifestation is accelerated, and every outcome corresponds perfectly to the inner assumption. The combination of alignment with abundance consciousness and identification with the higher self also amplifies the sense of freedom and power. You are no longer constrained by past experiences, inherited beliefs, or external conditions. You recognize that your inner state is sovereign, and that all outer results are reflections of that sovereignty. Every step you take, every decision you make, every feeling you cultivate is now an intentional expression of your assumed reality. This empowerment transforms not only your financial situation, but every area of life. Relationships, health, opportunities, and personal growth are all influenced by the state you maintain within. You begin to experience life as an unfolding of your own consciousness, with external circumstances serving as evidence rather than authority. As you consistently dwell in abundance consciousness and maintain identification with your higher self, the external world begins to mirror your inner certainty more rapidly and consistently. Circumstances align, opportunities appear, and wealth flows without struggle or force. You no longer need to question, doubt, or strategize endlessly. Your inner state functions as both blueprint and magnet, orchestrating the precise conditions necessary to manifest your desires. This process is reliable, repeatable, and entirely under your conscious direction. The combination of alignment with abundance and the guidance of the higher self create a state in which manifestation is inevitable, effortless, and continuous. You learn that the outer world cannot resist the force of a consciousness that is steady, certain, and aligned with the eternal principles of creation. You must live in the end and feel the reality of your desire as already accomplished, because this principle is the foundation of all manifestation. Most people attempt to create by focusing on the steps, the methods, and the external conditions they believe will lead to their goal. They act as if the future must be coaxed into existence through effort, planning, and struggle. And in doing so, they remain trapped in a state of becoming rather than already being. Living in the end is the exact opposite. It requires that you mentally, emotionally, and spiritually inhabit the state of the fulfilled desire now, without waiting for external confirmation. To live in the end is to assume the feeling, the certainty, and the completeness of the desire already realized. It is to move through life from the perspective of already having what you seek, allowing all circumstances to fall into place as a natural reflection of your inner state. This is not mere visualization. It is immersive experience in which your imagination, assumption, and feeling converge to create a reality that is inevitable in the physical world. Feeling the reality of your desire involves more than thinking about it intellectually. It requires that you engage every part of your being, imagining with sensory vividness and experiencing the emotions that would accompany the fulfillment. When you imagine, you must feel the textures, hear the sounds, and experience the sensations as if they are happening in the present moment. This experiential approach bypasses doubt and skepticism because it convinces the subconscious mind that the desire is already real. The subconscious mind cannot differentiate between vividly imagined experience and physical reality. When you live in the end, the subconscious accepts the state as true, and it begins to orchestrate circumstances to bring the external world into alignment with the internal reality. This is why so many manifestations fail. People imagine superficially, intellectually, or inconsistently, rather than inhabiting the full reality of the end in feeling, thought, and assumption. Living in the end also requires the abandonment of attachment to the how and when of manifestation. Most people are preoccupied with the mechanics of creation, asking how the desire will appear, through what channel, and when it will arrive. This preoccupation is a form of resistance because it indicates a lack of trust in the creative process. When you live in the end, you release concern for the external method and timing. You assume that the desire is already accomplished and allow the unseen forces to determine the means by which it will appear. Your responsibility is not to control circumstances, but to maintain the state of fulfillment internally. The outer world is then compelled to reflect this inner state, arranging itself in perfect correspondence to the end you have assumed. The focus shifts entirely from external evidence to internal certainty, which is the true cause of all manifestation. Once you inhabit the end, your perception of obstacles and lack transforms. Situations that previously appeared as challenges become neutral or instructive. They do not define your reality because your inner state already holds the completed desire. You begin to understand that apparent resistance in the external world is merely a temporary condition, a reflection of misaligned assumptions that you may have held in the past or that others around you may maintain. By consistently returning to the feeling of fulfillment, you override these temporary appearances and maintain the inner reality that is aligned with your goal. Your life begins to rearrange itself automatically, and circumstances, people, events begin to respond to the state of having rather than the state of wanting. This is the essence of living in the end. The outer world cannot contradict what is already established within. The principle of imagining with full sensory engagement and living in the end also teaches the importance of persistence and consistency. The subconscious mind is influenced by repeated, sustained impressions rather than fleeting thoughts or occasional visualization. Each time you return to the end, feel it and assume it as reality, you reinforce the state, strengthen your alignment, and solidify the blueprint for manifestation. This consistent dwelling in the end creates a momentum that the outer world cannot resist. Small doubts, distractions, or contradictory appearances may arise, but as long as you return faithfully to the inner state of fulfillment, the law of consciousness ensures that the external manifestation will follow. Persistence is not about struggle. It is about unwavering attention, repeated immersion in the desired state until it becomes dominant in consciousness. Understanding the role of feeling in living in the end also clarifies why many people fail to manifest their desires. Thinking alone is insufficient. The mind may understand a concept, plan actions, or strategize, but without feeling the reality of the end, the subconscious remains unconvinced. Feeling bridges the gap between imagination and external reality because it carries the emotional conviction that the mind alone cannot generate. It is the emotional energy that animates the mental image, giving it life and power. When the feeling is vivid and sustained, the subconscious treats it as fact, and creative forces respond accordingly. The depth, intensity, and consistency of the feeling are directly proportional to the speed, accuracy, and inevitability of manifestation. To live in the end effectively, you must prioritize feeling over analysis, sensory engagement over abstract thought, and immersive experience over superficial contemplation. The next key principle is the discipline of assuming the state silently, persistently, and without agitation. Many people attempt to force manifestation by thinking aloud, discussing it excessively, or expressing impatience. This creates tension, doubt, and fragmented energy that weaken the power of assumption. True mastery involves entering the state of the end quietly and persistently, cultivating it as a private, internal reality that you nurture consistently. The universe responds to steady, unbroken assumption rather than frantic or inconsistent effort. The inner life becomes the arena of creation, and the outer world must eventually mirror the steady state you maintain. This discipline trains the mind, the imagination, and the emotions to act in concert, create a coherent force that draws the desire into physical form with precision and inevitability. Another aspect of living in the end is the cultivation of emotional congruence. Emotions must match the reality of the assumed state. If your imagination says you have already received, but your emotions are filled with anxiety, doubt, or longing, the contradiction creates friction that slows manifestation. Emotional congruence requires that you feel the joy, peace, excitement, satisfaction that naturally accompany the fulfillment of your desire. Every act of feeling reinforces the assumed state, signaling to the subconscious that this reality is now permanent and dominant. Emotional congruence transforms imagination from a passive exercise into an active, living experience that drives the alignment of all forces toward the fulfillment of your desire. It ensures that the inner reality is strong, magnetic, and compelling to the outer world. Living in the end also teaches detachment from external validation. You do not wait for proof, recognition, or confirmation from the outer world. The state of fulfillment exists independently of circumstances, people, or events. The external world becomes evidence of what is already true internally rather than the determinant of reality. This detachment removes frustration, impatience, and doubt, allowing you to maintain the end consistently. You learn that the world cannot contradict the inner state you hold firmly and persistently, and this understanding brings both peace and power. Your consciousness becomes sovereign, and the outer world responds inevitably to the authority you exercise in your inner life. Persistence, emotional congruence, and detachment converge to create a state of irresistible magnetism. When you live in the end with these qualities, you emit an energy that the universe responds to without resistance. Circumstances, people, and opportunities begin to align naturally and effortlessly, reflecting the completeness and certainty of the state you inhabit. Manifestation becomes not a matter of struggle, chance, or external manipulation, but a natural unfolding of the law of consciousness. Every detail of the outer world falls into place because the inner world has already accepted the end as accomplished. Your imagination, feeling, and assumption converge into a single coherent force that the outer world cannot resist. And this is the essence of mastery in manifestation. The discipline of living in the end also strengthens faith and inner authority. As you repeatedly inhabit the state of fulfillment, you begin to experience subtle manifestations, synchronicities, and confirmations that reinforce your belief in the unseen. These experiences are not the source of your faith, but the reflection of it. Faith grows naturally as a result of consistent assumption, emotional congruence, and the persistent practice of living in the end. You no longer question the possibility of fulfillment because the state is already established in consciousness. This faith becomes a stabilizing force, anchoring you through temporary appearance of lack and guiding your inner life with clarity, confidence, and power. The outer world continues to adjust in harmony with the inner authority you cultivate, reflecting the reality you have assumed. Another critical aspect of living in the end is the understanding that imagination precedes reality in all matters. The mental creation must come first before it can appear physically. By fully immersing yourself in the end state, you provide the subconscious with a clear, detailed, and emotionally charged blueprint of the desired outcome. The law of consciousness then orchestrates every circumstance, interaction, and resource to conform perfectly to that blueprint. The imagination is not a mere rehearsal. It is the creative laboratory in which reality is forged. By prioritizing imagination, feeling, and assumption over external effort or observation, you ensure that the outer world will follow with precision, responding naturally to the eternal reality you maintain. Your imagination is the gateway to your future, and understanding its creative power is essential because it is the bridge between desire and reality. Most people underestimate the potency of imagination, treating it as a tool for fantasy or idle thought rather than the primary instrument of creation. In truth, imagination is not separate from reality. It is the formative state through which all manifestations pass before taking physical shape. Every innovation, every discovery, every sudden stroke of fortune begins as an image, a feeling, or a scene in the mind. When you deliberately employ your imagination to live in the end, to see, feel, and experience your desire as already accomplished, you are giving the subconscious mind a complete blueprint to act upon. The imagination does not create wishful illusions, it creates the cause that the universe will inevitably follow. By vividly constructing the reality you wish to experience, you direct the invisible force to align circumstances, people, and opportunities with the inner state you occupy. The imagination becomes a laboratory where the future is prefigured, a stage where every detail of your desired reality is rehearsed until it becomes a certainty in consciousness. Imagination works hand in hand with assumption, which is the acceptance that what you imagine is already true. Simply picturing wealth, success, or abundance is not enough if the mind still doubts, hesitates, or questions the possibility. Assumption solidifies the imagery by convincing the subconscious that it is real and already yours. The moment you assume the feeling of being a millionaire, for example, your imagination begins to populate that reality with details: how it feels to hold the wealth, how life changes, the freedom it brings, and the joy it generates. These details are not arbitrary. They are vital because they create a coherent and complete state within your consciousness. The more detailed, vivid, and emotionally charged the imagination, the more persuasive it becomes to the subconscious mind. which then orchestrates the outer world to reflect the inner reality. The subconscious does not debate or negotiate. It simply acts upon what is accepted as true, making imagination coupled with assumption the most direct and reliable path to manifestation. The imagination also serves as a tool for rehearsal, training your consciousness to inhabit the reality of your desire before it appears externally. When you imagine consistently and with feeling, you begin to condition your thoughts, emotions, and behaviors to align with the state of fulfillment. This conditioning is crucial because your outer world cannot manifest a state that your inner world does not accept. By rehearsing the reality in your imagination, you create a psychological foundation that becomes the cause of all external effects. Every scenario you play out, every emotion you feel, every scene you inhabit is recorded by the subconscious, which then translates this internal reality into the external world. The imagination is therefore not a passive activity. It is an active rehearsal of life, a deliberate shaping of your future in complete alignment with the desires you hold. Living in the end through imagination also teaches the importance of consistency and persistence. Fleeting thoughts or occasional visualizations are insufficient, because the subconscious is influenced by repeated and sustained impressions. To be effective, your imagination must be engaged regularly and consistently with full attention and feeling. Each session of imaginative rehearsal reinforces the state of fulfillment, strengthens the internal assumption, and deepens the alignment between the unseen and the seen. Persistence in imagination creates a momentum that the external world cannot resist, gradually shaping circumstances to reflect the internal reality. The key is not intensity alone, but regularity and immersion. By returning repeatedly to the imagined end, you establish it as the dominant state in consciousness, making the manifestation inevitable. Imagination also heightens awareness of opportunities and synchronistic events. When your mind is occupied with the detailed experience of your desire, it naturally begins to recognize circumstances in the external world that correspond to the imagined state. Opportunities that might have gone unnoticed suddenly become visible, solutions appear effortlessly, and resources present themselves in perfect timing. This is not coincidence. It is the direct reflection of a consciousness aligned with its goal. The imagination, when properly engaged, trains perception to notice and act upon possibilities that match the inner assumption. Your mind becomes a magnet for the right conditions, guiding your actions in ways that are consistent with the reality you have already accepted internally. The second keynote emphasizes the importance of discipline in guiding the imagination. While the imagination is powerful, it must be directed deliberately. Wandering, unfocused, or inconsistent thoughts dilute creative energy and produce fragmented results. Deliberate imagination, by contrast, channels mental energy toward a specific, coherent end. It concentrates attention, feeling, and belief on the desired reality, creating a unified field of consciousness that the universe responds to without hesitation. This disciplined use of imagination transforms it from a casual mental activity into a precise instrument of creation. You are no longer a passive thinker. You are an active designer of reality, constructing each detail of your future in full alignment with your chosen state. The more intentional and detailed your imagination, the more powerful and exact the manifestation becomes. The imagination also fosters emotional embodiment, which is crucial for manifestation. Feeling as if the desire is already real engages the nervous system, body, and subconscious mind in the creative process. Emotions provide the energy that drives the assumption into reality. Without emotional involvement, imagination remains abstract, and the subconscious does not register the state as true. By feeling the joy, satisfaction, and confidence that accompany the fulfilled desire, you make the imagined state irresistible and inevitable. Emotional congruence ensures that your imagination resonates fully with your inner conviction, creating a coherent and powerful signal that draws the outer world into alignment. The stronger and more immersive the emotional experience, the faster and more accurate the manifestation. Imagination also eliminates the need for external evidence or validation. When you consistently inhabit the imagined end, you no longer require proof, signals, or confirmation from the material world. Your inner reality becomes sufficient, complete, and unshakable. This independence from external circumstances is critical because it prevents doubt, impatience, or distraction from undermining the process. The outer world is compelled to reflect the inner state, and your imagination serves as the blueprint for every detail of the unfolding reality. By living in the end with imagination, you remove dependence on luck, strategy, or timing, relying instead on the unerring law of consciousness to translate your inner certainty into physical form. Finally, imagination works as a bridge between consciousness and the unseen forces that govern manifestation. When used deliberately, vividly, and consistently, it communicates your inner state to the universal intelligence that organizes reality. The imagined reality becomes the pattern that external events must follow. Every detail, every feeling, and every assumption creates a magnetic field that attracts corresponding circumstances. Your imagination, coupled with assumption, feeling, and persistence, become the active cause, while the universe serves as the responsive effect. By understanding and practicing this principle, you gain mastery over the creative process, learning to draw abundance, wealth, and fulfillment naturally and effortlessly. The imagination is not merely a mental tool. It is the instrument through which the unseen world manifests the desires you hold with conviction. Your assumptions determine everything, and understanding this truth is the key that unlocks every desire you hold. Most people approach life as though circumstances, luck, or external effort are the primary drivers of their reality. They focus on trying harder, planning meticulously, or reacting to events as they occur. While effort and planning have their place, they are secondary to the state of consciousness from which all experience emerges. Assumption is the act of declaring within your consciousness that a desire is already fulfilled, that a state is already true, and that reality will conform accordingly. It is the internal acceptance of a fact not yet visible in the material world. When you assume you are creating the cause, the outer world becomes the effect. The clarity, consistency, and completeness of your assumption dictate the precision and inevitability of manifestation. Whatever you accept and dwell upon internally will manifest externally, because the subconscious mind and universal intelligence cannot differentiate between what is imagined with conviction and what is physically present. Your assumptions are the seeds from which your entire experience grows, and mastering this principle allows you to consciously create life exactly as you desire. Assumption is not a casual thought or fleeting hope. It is a full immersion into the state of having, feeling, and knowing the desired reality. To assume effectively, you must occupy the mental, emotional, and spiritual position of the fulfilled state. Imagine the life you wish to live in vivid detail. Feel the emotions, experience the circumstances, and move as if the desire is already accomplished. The subconscious mind records this state as truth, and it begins to orchestrate circumstances, relationships, and events in perfect correspondence. Many people fail to manifest because they assume inconsistently, superficially, or with doubt. The key is complete, unwavering immersion. The moment your assumption becomes dominant in consciousness, the external world has no choice but to reflect it. The universe always conforms to the inner state. It simply waits for you to settle definitively into the reality you wish to experience. Assumption is therefore not wishful thinking. It is deliberate, conscious creation, the internal cause that generates the outer effect with unerring accuracy. Another essential aspect of assumption is persistence. The law of consciousness operates continuously, but it requires a steady and consistent signal to produce a coherent outcome. If your assumptions fluctuate, your inner state sends mixed messages, creating conflict and delay. By persisting in the assumption of the desired state, regardless of current circumstances, you reinforce the inner blueprint and strengthen its magnetic power. Temporary doubts or contrary appearances are merely signals to return to the assumed state, not reasons to abandon it. Each time you return faithfully, your consciousness becomes more firmly aligned, and the outer world accelerates to reflect that alignment. Persistence in assumption is not about effort, struggle, or coercion. It is about maintaining a steady, confident, and complete inner reality until the external world conforms naturally and effortlessly. This practice transforms your consciousness into a continuous generator of reality, producing results with inevitability. Assumption also teaches the importance of detachment from the outer world while remaining fully engaged internally. You do not attempt to manipulate circumstances, force outcomes, or rely on others to prove the truth of your state. The outer world is merely the mirror of your inner reality. Your responsibility is to maintain the assumption, to inhabit it fully, and to persist in the feeling of fulfillment. By doing so, you create a reality that the universe is compelled to deliver. This detachment fosters peace, confidence, and clarity because your sense of success and abundance no longer depends on visible results. External events cannot contradict the state you hold with authority, and this understanding allows you to operate from a place of power rather than need, from certainty rather than desperation. Assumption becomes both the cause and the measure of reality, while external circumstances are secondary reflections of the inner truth you maintain. The assumption of wealth, opportunity, or any desired state also reconditioned. The subconscious mind, which is the operative force behind all manifestation. The subconscious does not question, doubt, or analyze. It accepts whatever is consistently impressed upon it as fact. By assuming a state fully and persistently, you embed a blueprint in the subconscious that governs thoughts, decisions, behaviors, and perception. Every choice you make begins to align automatically with the assumed state, and your actions reflect the reality you have already accepted internally. The subconscious then orchestrates the external conditions to match this internal alignment, arranging circumstances, people, and events to fulfill the dominant assumption. Mastery of assumption is mastery of the creative process itself, because it allows you to consciously dictate the internal reality that the external world will inevitably mirror. Assumption also dissolves the limitations imposed by past experiences, inherited beliefs, or societal conditioning. Many people carry ideas of lack, limitation, or impossibility that create barriers to fulfillment. By consciously assuming the state you desire, you override these old patterns and replace them with new, empowering realities. The power of assumption lies in its ability to redefine what is possible in your life, not by changing external conditions directly, but by altering the consciousness from which all conditions emerge. Once the assumption is firmly established, the universe responds automatically. The outer world cannot resist the force of a consciousness that is settled in certainty and aligned with the desired state. You are no longer constrained by history or circumstance because your internal reality has already transcended them. Assumption is the tool that transforms potential into actuality, allowing you to inhabit your future in the present moment. The final principle is the assumption, when combined with feeling, imagination, and persistent dwelling in the end, creates a state of unshakable magnetism. Your inner world becomes so complete, coherent, and compelling that the outer world is drawn to conform naturally. People, opportunities, and circumstances are attracted to the assumed state because consciousness is irresistible when it is steady and vivid. The more detailed, emotionally charged, and consistently held the assumption, the faster and more accurate the manifestation. There is no need to force, struggle, or manipulate. The universe simply aligns to the reality you inhabit within. This is the culmination of the creative process. Assumption transforms your inner life into a blueprint, and the universe mirrors it in the physical world. You are not waiting, hoping, or asking. You are living in a reality that already exists in consciousness, and the outer world must inevitably follow. Assumption is the final and most powerful step because it consolidates all prior principles: imagination, feeling, persistence, alignment, and spiritual awareness into a single, coherent act of conscious creation. As we bring this journey to a close, remember that every step, every principle, and every keynote we have explored is a doorway to conscious creation. You are not merely a passive participant in life. You are the author of your own reality. Every thought you think, every feeling you cultivate, every assumption you hold shapes the circumstances that will appear in your life. Wealth, opportunity, success, and abundance are not distant dreams. They are natural extensions of the inner state you maintain. By embracing spiritual awareness, persistent assumption, vivid imagination, emotional congruence, and gratitude for the unseen, you position yourself as the conscious creator of your destiny. You are empowered to live in the end, to embody the state of having, and to allow the universe to respond faithfully to the reality you hold within. Each principle reinforces the other, creating a coherent, unstoppable force that draws your desires into manifestation with precision, ease, and inevitability. The path we have explored together is not theoretical, it is practical, immediate, and accessible. It invites you to step fully into the power of your own consciousness and to understand that nothing outside you can prevent what is established within. Every moment you dedicate to living in the end, to assuming the state of fulfillment, and to feeling the reality of your desires strengthens the magnetic force that shapes your world. Remember, the unseen always precedes the seen, and by consistently dwelling in the state of your imagined reality, you set into motion a chain of events that the outer world cannot resist. Wealth, opportunity, joy, and abundance are your natural inheritance. The only requirement is your willingness to assume, feel, and persist. As we conclude this series, know that the power to transform your life rests entirely within you. Your imagination, your assumptions, your feelings, and your awareness are the instruments through which reality bends to your vision. You are the first step, the prime mover, and the conscious creator of your destiny. Step boldly into the state of your fulfilled desires and allow the universe to bring forth what you have already established in consciousness. Every law, every principle, every keynote share here exists to remind you that you are not waiting for life to happen. You are actively creating it with every thought, every feeling, and every assumption. Thank you to each and every viewer for investing your attention, your energy, and your belief into this journey. Your willingness to engage, to imagine, and to assume is the very act that sets the wheels of manifestation in motion. May you walk forward with confidence, clarity, and certainty, knowing that the life of your dreams is already unfolding from within. Thank you for watching, for believing, and for stepping into the powerful, creative force that you truly are.